Okay, so here is the example. Decide whether the parallelogram is a rectangle, rhombus, square, or none of these. So they're already telling you in the directions that these are all parallelograms. So you already know these are parallelograms. You don't have to use one of the 5 ways to prove that it's a parallelogram because they're already telling us these are parallelograms. Now we're just trying to see if we can go further and say whether it's a rectangle, rhombus, or square, or none of these means it's just a plain old parallelogram. It's not one of these other special parallelograms. Okay? So on part A, looking at that, is that one of the ways that we could prove rectangle, rhombus, or square? Well, if you look back at your rhombus notes, it said if a parallelogram has two adjacent congruent sides, then it is a rhombus. So part A is, yep, it's not only a parallelogram, but more specifically, it's a rhombus. Because if it's a parallelogram, I can say, okay, these two sides have to be congruent, so that has a single slash, that would have a single slash. This side's got to be congruent to this side, so single slash. So then they would all have single slashes on them, which means it's a rhombus. Okay, part B. So not anything's drawn to scale, so don't ever assume that it is. So we already know this is a parallelogram. Now, what was it called when the diagonals were perpendicular to each other? Looking back at your notes, is that is it rectangle, rhombus, or a square? Well, the perpendicular diagonals said rhombus. But notice it also has a right angle here in this corner, which is this whole angle right there. Again, even though it's not drawn to scale, it's that whole angle. So then which one said that if you have a parallelogram and one of these angles is a right angle, what is it? Well, then it would also be a rectangle. So this is a rectangle and a rhombus. Sorry, I'm drawing with the mouse. It's not as easy since the pen's acting crazy. And so what was it if it had markings for a rhombus and markings for a rectangle? Then what was it called? Then we would say this is a square. Okay, so that's going to be a square. So more specifically, it does have a marking of being a rhombus because it has diagonal perpendicular, and it also has one right angle on the actual, just the outside figure here, the outside drawing has a right angle. That was for rectangle. And so if it has markings for both a rectangle and a rhombus, remember that was more specifically called a square. That's what it meant to have markings for both. Okay, and then part C is showing that you have opposite angles congruent. And they already told you it was a parallelogram. Remember, that's one way you could tell that it was a parallelogram. But these markings do not say that it's a rectangle, a rhombus, or a square. So we would say none of these. Which that just means it's just a plain old parallelogram. It's not more specifically a rectangle, rhombus, or square. Okay? So then the other part, so basically what you're going to work on today to practice to get ready for your test on Thursday is you're going to look back at the 8.3, 8.4 worksheet, and you're working on problems 5 through 9, and then practice some of the other problems if you didn't get them finished. And you're doing the same thing that we had done on 1 through 4. So where you have to draw the picture, so it says, gives you directions about what the picture looks like and what letters you're using. So if you have that worksheet out, number 5 through 8 says you're looking at parallelogram CLPK. So you already know it's a parallelogram on 5 through 8. We're just trying to decide if it's further a rhombus, rectangle, or neither when you mark the information that they give you. Okay. So then practice those. The answer key is on Brightspace, so if you want to check tonight you can, or the sub has the answer key so you can check it while you work in class if there's time. And I think that's it. So get working on that. do your repetitions, because remember the day of the test on Thursday, or actually I'll probably do it when I get back since I won't be here on Thursday. During the test, I will do notebook repetition check, so make sure that you're doing those notebook repetitions. Okay?